Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time with this association, and thanks very much to the committee for accepting my paper. This paper is preliminary work, part of a larger project funded by the British Academy, which I own at the University of Cambridge, titled Italian Arab Musical Encounters, Sound Colonization and Power. The Colonial Museum, the Museo Coloniale of Rome, was inaugurated by Mussolini in 1923 and was originally located in the Ministry of the Colonies. In conjunction with the proclamation of the Empire of the Italian Africa in 1936, it changed its name to the Museum of Italian Africa. At the end of the 30s, the museum closed for inventory verification and reopened only after the war in 1947, remaining active until the beginning of the 70s, when the collection were donated then to the Italo-African Institute and the museum closed definitely. The objects of the museum remained stored for about 40 years. Only in 2017 did the collection become part of the Museum of Civilizations, where a work of conservative recovery and inventory verification began. So the collection of the former Colonial Museum of Rome included approximately 12,000 objects of ethnographic, historical, anthropological, archaeological, artistic, and architectural nature. Today, the collection belongs to the Ministry of Culture, but they are administered by the ISMEO, the International Association for Mediterranean and Oriental Studies, which conducts study, training, and research programs related to the cultures and countries of Asia, Africa, and their interactions with the Mediterranean basin. The association was recreated in 2016, and it inherited everything that belonged to the Istituto Italiano per il Medio ed Estremo Oriente, plus what belonged to the Italian Institute for Africa and the Orient, the ISIAO, which was established by law number 505 in 1995 to maximize national initiative and resources in the field of action of the previous Italian Institute for Middle East and Far East, and also the Italo-African Institute. Sorry about all these institutions, but it's a way of Italian of mixing all these collections all around our institutions. So the entry registers of objects were missing. The origin or the methods of collection are unknown. Other forms of archiving and data collection were not present. Today, of the ISMEO, I'm the music curator, and in January 2025, so very recently, a few months ago, during a visit to our library section, La Sala ISIAO, which is a room in the National Library, so part of the collection, like the sort of museo collection is in the Museum of Civilization. Then lots of documents and books and papers are in a room of this ISMEO in the National Library in Rome. So one of my visits in January, encountered the librarian Lorenzo Deklic, who showed me two unexpected packs of discs. So the first one contained Columbia records of the so-called Checchia collection, and I borrowed this definition from my colleague Dr. Giampaolo Chiarico, who has previously done research on these records, tracing them all around the world and in Ethiopia particularly. Giampaolo has also visited the ISMEO collection 3 weeks ago, attesting about 8 new discs which were unknown so far of this collection. So I will not go into much details about this part, as it is a work which will be developed by Giampaolo in the future, but earlier references to a collection of 248 songs from different regions of the Africa Orientale Italiana recorded in 1939, were reported by also by Barblan. This initiative was led by Saleh Ahmed Kekia, a wealthy Eritrean Muslim from Addis Abeba, in collaboration with the Italian Ufficio Studi della Triennale d'Oltremare. So there is a lot more to say about this part of the collection, which will be studied by Gianpaolo Chiarico in the next months. But of note, none of these recordings are held at the Italian National Sound Archive, which is the Istituto Centrale per I Beni Sonori ed Audiovisivi. That means I cannot play any of them for now because they're in the process of digitizing in collaboration with the Italian National Sound Archive, but also with the National Library, because those packs are still in the room of the National Library. So we at ISMEO received a partnership letter from only last week, actually. And this is just an example of the disc of the Kekia collection. So let's move to the second pack found at the ISMEO. They are what I call the Arabic section of the collection. Among the papers of the Ministry of Italian Africa, there is an exchange of letters referring the presence of a sound archive at the Museum of Italian Africa. Adolfo Vitale, the director at that time, labeled the discs with numbers along with an attempt of producing a list of songs and discs. There was maybe an exhibition to put up, or Vitale just became the new director of the museum. It was beginning of the 50s. And the office study of the ministry asked the Africa Italian Institute what kind of Arabic disc they had or they owned. Some of them match the label number with the list, like this one, 16, number 16. Some others did not, the one we found. So those latter with a different label, like this one, reveal a previous inventory but lost, which probably belonged to the Museo Coloniale of the 30s, with this special label, Museo Coloniale stamped, discotheque, and then some numbers written by hands. So there are records made by several institutions, as you can see. You have a parlophone there, very clearly, the Cetra, which was the Compagnia per Edizioni Teatro Registrazioni ed Affini in Italy, but also with the support of, at the very bottom of the Ente Radio Rurale. This, for example, is a copy we have at ISMEO. This is the one we have. It was released by Parlophone, as I said, so spelled without the E at the end, which operated as part of various national branches, as you know. So the disc and other of this time of the same project are also included in the Italian National Sound Archive. And the legal acquisition was, which I confirmed at the center a few months ago, was the 31st December 1936. So this is the image of the same disc on the website of the Italian National Sound Archive. So we can maybe have a listen to it from the website very quickly, 20 seconds.
ما أفضل ما يفتتح به المقال ما فاتحة هذا الكتاب الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين هذه.
So as you heard, they were reading, it was Quranic school, they were reading the first chapter of the Quran, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Like this, yeah. So looking at the catalogs of the Cetra, for example, there was a section of Arabic music attested in 1939. So the catalog says on the right, discs in Arabic language. Only 3 weeks ago in the archive we found a list of discs published by Cetra, which was sent to the Italian Discotheque, so the National Archive. The list was due by law, but later on for another law they were due to check censorship. So those recordings, for example, are present in the published catalog and in the list to the Discotheque, but the actual discs are not present as a deposit in the Sound Archive. So the hypothesis is that sometimes the legal deposit did not happen, probably for economic reason, as some letters like those ones attest the disappointments of retard in receiving the disc, especially during and after the war in 1947. However, the first point I wish to make is that those discs of the Museo Coloniale make clearly a separate sound archive from the national one, an archive which belonged only to the Museo Coloniale. I will clarify this point with further sources in a minute. So from Cetra, some records were sent to the National Archive too, some were not sent. What we have to understand so far is that those parlophone green color are present in both collections. So the one I played was from the National Archive, the other I showed was from the ISMEO collection. So, but the question is still, what are those recordings and why these were sent to those separate archives during the 30s? Was it meant to offer insight into how colonial Italy recorded and presented the North African traditions for Italian audience? So going back to the disc that I just played, we see that it was also recorded, as I said, in collaboration with Ente Radio Rurale. And the text on the label is in Italian, but it's also in Arabic. And so we just heard them reading the Quran, the first surah, Al-Fatiha, the one that opens the book. So this recording likely served an educational and cultural preservation role reflecting pedagogical technique of the era. So how come Radio Rurale rural radio had this role in such recordings? So Radio Rurale was founded in 1933. So in general, at that time, the abnormal development of European urban agglomerations was considered the main cause of the decline of the old continent. And the result was the exhalation of the ethical, demographic, and ecological values of the rural world. The Radio Rurale monthly journal, as you can see on the screen, published the programs for school and music scores already in 1937, as well as discs with the support of Cetra of educational purposes, with songs, but also scores. So going back to the first point, therefore the answer is yes, these Arabic records were exactly what you would collect under the Radio Rurale for the Italian National Discotheque during the fascist colonial time. And of course, you would have sent them to the Colonial Museum. So the last example from the collection I want to discuss in other detail is another Cetra recording of red color, of which the only copies known so far are held at the ISMEO archive. So those are missing from the National Sound Archive. So in this one, we read Kamel Qadi, a well-known sheikh, an elder master whose authority derives from being a sort of a guardian of popular music, popular traditions coming from Tripoli. He was an expert of Malouf. Malouf is the traditional music of it's a wide genre in North Africa, developed in Tunisia, in Algeria, but also in Libya. And it's not only a vocal genre, and it's also of Andalusian ancient origin. So it's accompanied by instrument and also widespread, as I said, from Libya to Algeria. Kamel was an Arabic star of the 30s. He was the music director also of the Radio Tripoli ensemble. migrated to Istanbul, probably contributing to the arabesque music genre, before then migrating also to UK. So this arabesque music genre of that time developed in Turkey so musicians were imitating a sort of Arabic style of that time. And we all know also that he recorded from this online website, he recorded for the Columbia. So, leaving aside the artistic part of the records, both for the second time, but because we haven't actually digitalized it yet. So, what is at stake here is that it was accompanied by the Little Arabic Orchestra of the Air, which was we already encountered it previously in the Cetra catalog of 1939. So the EIR, which is the acronym of Ente Italiano per le Audizioni Radiofoniche, was the Italian public body that held monopoly on radio broadcasting in Italy from 1927 to 1944. Then became the RAI later on in the 50s. So I'm not sure whether there was an Arabic orchestra in Rome at EIR. But initially I thought it could have been the orchestra which was established in the radio station of Bari. Bari, for a few years, starting from the 1934, had a radio station which one of the earliest in the Mediterranean, which in Italy broadcasting in Arabic, completely in Arabic, towards Libya and towards Egypt and Lebanon. So it was actually the Italian Arabic radio in Italy, which, as I said, started in 1934, increasing the offer with music programs since 1937. In 1938, it started to publish its journal that you can read there. It's in Arabic, but at the bottom in Italian, but only one of the cover, the back cover is in Italian, but the entire journal is in Arabic and was published in Rome, in Italy. So this image on the right shows the names and photos of the player of this new founded Arabic orchestra in 1939. But unfortunately, I'm not sure about the Radio Bari anymore, as I talked to very recently with my colleague Isabella Bonizio, which she sent me these photos from L'Avvenire journal. It was an Italian journal published in Libya, but so I was not convinced anymore for those records whether recorded in Bari from this orchestra or they were recorded probably in Libya. In fact, in the journal L'Avvenire di Tripoli is described another Arabic orchestra at the radio station of Tripoli, which belonged actually to the Italian EIR. With the name of musicians, and we find again Kamel El Ghadi, Mokhtar Mrabet, Bashir Fehmi, all those that we encountered in the catalogue of the Cetra just before. So, in conclusion, this paper offers a preliminary investigation into unexamined colonial era sound archive housed with the former Museo Coloniale of Rome, now part of the Museum of Civilization and administrated by ISMEO. So by focusing on a select group of recording, some neglected in National Sound Repository and others duplicated across separate archives, it reveals the fragmented and often opaque structures behind the Italian colonial sound documentation. So the material discussed, including the Quranic recitation with ideological support of the Radio Rurale and performance by figures such as Kamel El Ghadi, underscores how fascist Italy used the sound not just as a culture preservation, but also as a mechanism of power, pedagogy, and propaganda. So the role of institutions like Ente Radio Rurale, the Cetra Company, the EIAR, illustrate a state-directed effort to integrate colonial rural voices into sonic fabric of national identity. So this preliminary research points to the existence of a parallel colonial sound archive distinct from the national sound archive at the time, whose study can illuminate broader questions around memory, control, and the circulation of Arab and African music in the fascist imagination. Future work will focus on digitization, detailed cataloging, and collaborative research to map this history and unpack their culture and political implication. Thanks very much.